These are sometimes $3+ billion projects.
So it was not that difficult to win for you?
It was very difficult for us to win, believe me. That's a good question. Well, they try and minimize cash flow going outside of China. You have to dream. I'm going to make $1 million today.
Today we're talking to Dan Gillis, Director Technology for Chevron Lummus Global. Nice to meet you, Dan.
Very nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to talk to you today because you're an international expert in both heavy oil processes and applications, and you have more than 35 years of experience in this sphere. And what is more, you're working for one of the leaders on the market nowadays. Let's talk about management, because you as a top manager achieved a lot within your company and during your career, and it's quite interesting to understand how you manage to control all the people who work with you.
Yeah, I see my role more of an influencer and a promoter, supporter of finding solutions, because I've always had this belief, and I've seen it in the past, that there's unique solutions for every project, and you have to find it. And that's our role as a technology licensor, is to help the customer find that unique solution for them that makes their project a success. So that's been my influence on others, and I would say it comes the same way. We have a fantastic atmosphere at our company, and it's a unique company in that sense. It's not large like a Chevron or a McDermott, that are two owners' companies, but the people there, tremendous experience, interest, and I'm just pleased to be part of that.
Okay.
That's the way I would say it.
Nice to hear. And talking about motivation, do you need to motivate your team every day or like every month, or how does it work?
Motivation is a continuous effort, right? And you have to show respect, interest, and care with those you work with. You have to point to where the opportunities are for our company and for individuals if you're going to motivate them.
And despite motivation, is it necessary to invest in your team development?
Well, you know, I look back in my career, I've had tremendous opportunities to do different things, and that's probably helped me be where I am today. And others deserve the same chance. So you can't just leave a person in one job, especially if they're talented. You don't want to leave them in one job for too long. You want to keep helping them grow. Now, having said that, some of our most technically knowledgeable people aren't necessarily interested in doing project management or sales, right? So you've got to find areas for them to grow into taking lead positions in new technology development or applications, interactions with customers. So you have to find which path is best for each person so that they can grow to their fullest and contribute the fullest to the company.
You told me that you started as an engineer.
I guess my career path started when I was actually in engineering school. Between second and third year, I got an intern position at a refinery in the city I'm from, in Canada. And I ended up in that summer being a process relief operator. And so I got to, from the bottom, see what refinery operations was about, and I really enjoyed it. In fact, I had two interns there at that refinery, and the second one I remember sitting in the control room, and these senior management from the refinery came in with this couple of people, and this one guy I could tell was really important, technically very smart. And so he was telling people what to do, how you should operate this FCC and this and that, and I didn't know what he was talking about then, because I didn't know technologies very much except for what I learned from the other operators. But I thought that was pretty neat stuff. And so even though when I graduated from university, a high-performing student could have a choice of jobs back then, I went back to that refinery because I wanted to do that type of work. And so my career started in refinery operations, process engineering, and then it moved into, I got an opportunity to work on a unique project converting that refinery from light crude processing to heavy crude. And that was my first introduction into residue upgrading technologies, which I then moved on to another company after working and developing that project, a major oil company in the world in Western Canada, where I became an expert at a very young age on all of the residue upgrading processes available at that time in the later 1980s. After doing business development work and project development work for that company, I moved on to a technology licensing company because I thought that's what I really want to do. And that's how I got into technology licensing, where I spent coming on 20 years now doing in various roles. And it's just been a tremendous career path and enjoyable. So it's kind of an odd start. But I'll tell you one thing. When I joined that first company in technology licensing, after a few years, I remember going to a refinery and we ended up in a control room and I was talking to people and I thought to myself, I've come back full circle because, probably 15 years ago, I said, 16 years ago, this is what I wanted to do. And I found myself one day, I'm doing what I thought was so impressive to do. I was now the expert coming in, helping a refinery.
What do you consider the most, so to say, contribution to the development of the industry from your side?
I've been fortunate to work on 2 or 3 significant projects that have become commercialized, and that's before I got into technology licensing. And I've been part of identifying new flow schemes and technologies that have been commercialized. And I can point to 3 or 4 of them without being specific, that when I look at that project or look at this technology that many companies are using now, it just feels good inside that you've added value.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what advice can you give to those guys who are just at the beginning of the way?
Find something to work on that you think is important, not just to your company, but to society, and go do it well and hopefully see it succeed. And with that, you will succeed and your career path will find the best path for you.
Okay, that's a good advice. So what is your opinion? Which technologies are key trends today?
Well, if you look what's happening in the refining industry today, we're seeing some of the biggest changes we've ever seen. One of the biggest changes is going to be the change in sulfur regulations and bunker fuels, IMO 2020, where the sulfur specification for fuel oil is going to go down from 3.5% to 0.5% sulfur. This is a huge change and is shocking the refining industry. So the technologies we're going to see that are going to have to respond to that need are processes such as residue hydrotreating, short name RDS we use at our company, residue hydrocracking, and to a certain extent delayed coking. Mm-hmm. Now with these technologies will come along processes that will further process the residue upgrading technologies products such as hydrocracking and RFCC. We're also seeing higher demand for petrochemical processes and technologies that overlap refining and petrochemicals.
What are your plans for the future? What technologies you're going to offer the market?
We've got new catalysts and processes associated with crude to chemicals coming out. We have a very advanced form of residue hydrocracking, full conversion to high quality products called LC slurry that actually it's already been licensed in projects in engineering, procurement, construction phase for a Swedish refiner. That will be out there soon.
Coming back to IMO 2020, what kind of technologies you're currently developing for this?
Yes, well, one of them we've brought to the marketplace, in fact commercialized already, is called LSFO. Now, this is a version of residue hydrocracking that combines our LC finding, residue hydrocracking process, and RDS, residue hydrotreating. Normally, with residue hydrocracking, you want to maximize the conversion and produce maximize production of transportation fuels like diesel, gasoline. But with this new regulation coming in, product like ultra-low sulfur fuel oil, the price is expected to get close to that of transportation fuels. So a process like LC-LSFO, which can do both, will be highly attractive in that it doesn't produce any low-value products per se.
About your agreement that you signed with Saudi Aramco in 2018
Yes.
For joint development of heavy oil processes, and as far as I remember on your website, you stated that this will give a lot of opportunities for them. So what kind of opportunities we are talking about?
Right. Well, the joint development agreement we signed with Saudi Aramco is to develop a new process to convert crude to petrochemicals. And this is requiring extensive research by both parties to bring this technology along. So far, the results are very promising, where we are seeing potential for over 70% petrochemical production from crude oil, which is far beyond any of the competitive options.
Wow, that's impressive. About your last year project with Gison Refinery and Petrochemical, was it difficult to start working with them? Did you take part in the elaboration?
This is a major expansion at that refinery, where they're going to be processing higher sulfur crude oils from the Middle East. In order to do so, they need to have conversion of the bottom half of the refinery. What we're supplying is the residue hydrocracking technology to it, and its form of residue hydrocracking called LC Max, which can obtain and will obtain over 93% conversion of residues. And this will allow HPCL to have a very competitive, not one of the most competitive refineries in the world, once this process is installed and they come up in full production.
This is a very impressive numbers that you are announcing, and are there any competitors who can provide them with the same?
We were selected amongst three contenders for this project. All of them have their own versions of high conversion, but the advantage this LC Max technology has is very unique in that it obtains high conversion using proven processes in a unique, elegant flow scheme. And yes, there's been tremendous research by others to develop high conversion technologies, but very limited commercialization of these concepts.
So it was not that difficult to win for you?
It was very difficult for us to win, believe me. It is always difficult to win a license award, and that's because look what's happening. Customers are spending on these big projects. It's not like they're spending $100 million. These are $2, sometimes $3+ billion projects, and maybe 25% of the cost of that is this major residue conversion process. So when you're spending that sort of money, you are obliged as an owner to do a rigorous evaluation, and you have strong demands from those offering the technologies to fully explain and prove that their claims are valid and will work. In fact, the banks will not provide financing for these types of projects if they don't have some commercial basis to them.
Talking about your hobbies, surprisingly, I found out that you're a fan of yard landscaping and also house remodeling. And in my mind, it's something huge to do. So how do you find time for this?
Well, first of all, you know, the culture I come from, Western Canada, it was quite common for us to be involved in doing things ourselves. It's the culture we come from, a smaller community per se in the world scale, but with opportunities to do it. In fact, I remember one of the refinery operators saying to other operators, you know, they would all end up building their own houses or subcontracting CBs. They had a lot of time. They worked so many days off, and it was part of the culture there. And so I learned from a good friend of mine, probably my best friend in high school, how to do things like that, work with my hands. And I enjoyed it because of the mental demands in a job. Doing something physical and that added value was good. But if you look at my hobbies, interested in yard landscaping, house remodeling, and projects around that, they're similar to what I've done in my career. They take planning, they take focus, and you have to have a vision of where you want to get to. And with that, that's the same in the type of work I do, and anyone who's successful in any role they have. And so, to me, these hobbies are a natural part of who I am, just like the type of work I think I do is a natural part of who I am. And it's been very enjoyable.
Do you have free time with your multitasking?
The type of company I work for and the type of role I have, it's not a 8 to 5 days a week job, right? Because customers' demands are whenever they are, and sometimes it takes a lot of effort for a long period of time, but there's also opportunities, especially when you travel the world to meet customers, to have, like I'll have today, to visit this beautiful city, a couple hours free. So I take advantage when I can of this limited free time I have to enjoy.
You have a lot of projects in process, and you're planning to have more in the future, I guess. And one of I've heard about is the projects by the end of 2019 in China, where your isodewaxing technology is implemented. Am I right? Mm-hmm. So can you tell more about these projects?
Sure, certainly. Well, first of all, we've actually sold many isodewaxing projects in China. But just talking on the side a bit, the Chinese market is very interesting. I would say in some ways they can be challenging, but in some ways it's very enjoyable working with them too. The Chinese refiners are very interested in obtaining the latest and most advanced technologies for their projects. What we also see is that Chinese refiners are less risk adverse to new ideas and technologies than other parts of the world. They're more flexible because we're always trying to bring the best and latest to the market, which can be difficult to do. Now on isodewaxing, we have actually licensed many isodewaxing units in China, and the reason for that is if you look at the Chinese market, it's a growing economy, as most of us understand. So there's a greater need for lubricating oils for the transportation industries, etc. And additionally, with the higher quality vehicles, the type of lubricating oils have to be better. And what isodewaxing does, it produces Group 3 lube oils, which is the highest standard quality lube oils used today. And parallel to this, the Chinese customers are phasing out the old solvent-based Group 1 lube oil. So there's this high demand for this Group 3 lube oils, thus the strong interest in this very high-quality lube oil manufacturing technology, isodewaxing, which maximizes yields of Group 3 lube oils.
Mm-hmm. And anyways, despite all the advantages working with Chinese market, many companies say that it's quite difficult to start working with them because it's a kind of closed market who is very selective for companies whom they're going to work with.
That depends on what you have to offer and what their needs are. The Chinese refining community is actually very strong and technically advanced in many areas. But there are areas where they desire to obtain the latest technologies from companies like ourselves. And in those situations, we've been very successful. And fortunately, the technologies they want are the ones that we market, which is why we're very active in China and have been very successful for many years there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good to hear. And what can you advise to other companies, for example, to start working with China? What should they think about first of all?
You have to recognize that the Chinese expectations and ability to purchase outside of China are different than maybe, let's say, well, we're in Hungary right here, a refinery in Hungary purchasing technology from the United States, from a company like ourselves. They have restrictions. They can't, they have rules where they try and minimize cash flow going outside of China. So you can't necessarily sell all of the features and products that come with your specific technology. You have to select what is the most important to them, offer that, and offer it in a cost-effective way, because the Chinese are very strong negotiators when it comes to pricing.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And how can you make a cost-effective solution while it's so expensive itself? You just told me about billions of dollars, so.
Yeah, well, certainly a company like ours doesn't get that sort of money for our technology. It's a very small part of the entire price of our project. So you have to sometimes be selective on how much engineering you do to support this technology transfer and know-how. Maybe it's a smaller package. Sometimes they like to at times use existing designs to minimize costs, and the equipment that you supply, that you normally sell to say an established Western customer, maybe you can't offer that, and they can't obtain as high efficiency, but still have outstanding technology basis for applying to their project.
Talking about your current project with Hindustan Petroleum Corporation that you've signed, if I'm not mistaken, a year ago. So what can you tell about this?
The HPCL project is one of those I mentioned earlier, where they want to process lower cost crude oils like Middle East sour crudes, but produce high quality products for their growing transportation market. And we enable this with our technology like LC-Max. But there's been other projects many other projects in Asia that have also been able to use our technologies. We've sold many of our RDS technologies for converting atmospheric residue, preparing atmospheric residue for RFCC processes to maximize production of gasoline and propylene for those sorts of markets. And that's helped those customers have very cost-effective, attractive solutions.
And as for Russian, for me, it was very interesting to know that you have projects in Russia as well, specifically with Tenneco. And as far as I remember, you started working with them in 2006, and you're still continuing. So what can you say about working on Russian markets?
Well, the Russian market's been also very important to us. We've sold many hydrocracking processes, lube technologies, and petrochemical processes into the Russian market. So it's been very important to CLG, and we have many friends and associations in the Russian market that we're proud to have. The Tenneco one is an example where we have agreement to continue looking for applications of our technologies, and we continue to do so. And it's been a wide range of technologies we've been able to bring into the Russian market to meet their needs, which maybe are a little bit different than maybe Asia, but fortunately we've had technologies and solutions that they've acquired. So we've really been proud to be partners with these Russian companies and look forward to continued close alliances in the future.
We've been talking about sports before, and you've mentioned that you're a fan of hockey.
Yes.
So can you tell more? Do you play yourself now?
Technically, I still play at my age, but only once or twice a year, so I claim I can. I've played hockey all my life, and well, see, I grew up in Western Canada in the prairie provinces, where that was our culture, ice hockey in the winter. The long winters, we play hockey. In fact, a lot of people don't know that, but when the baby carriages where I'm from, they're usually 6 inches longer, and that's because our mothers would put our skates on when we're sleeping so we could start skating when we get up. No, sorry, that's not quite true. But it's almost the truth, because I think I've had skates on since I was 2.5 years of age.
Wow.
So, yeah. And in fact, my backyard, my father had an ice rink.
About Canadians are working.
Yeah, well, we it's part of the culture. At least it was then. And you played at noon hour, you played recess, and the weekends you would play hockey, and just like other parts of the world, some kids play soccer or football in most parts of the world called, but it was our culture, and I continue to play it in a recreation way, which you have opportunities where I've always lived. And I played other sports like tennis too, more tennis now than hockey as I've aged, so it's been good.
So were you good in hockey?
Yeah, I was okay. I wasn't an elite hockey player, but I could skate pretty fast, and especially for when I got into my middle age, in 30s and 40s, I was as fast as a lot of these guys who became elite players, and just enjoyed the game tremendously.
And have you ever dreamed of being a professional hockey player?
Of course, I still dream of it. But it wasn't going to happen then, and it's not going to happen now. But of course, you have to dream.
You're gonna attend one of our congresses, which is Petrochemical and Refining Congress.
Yes.
So how often do you go to such kind of events?
Well, as a company, we attend several of them. I probably do upwards of half a dozen a year. They're very important for us to go to, though. We want to hear what our customers are thinking, the customers that come there, and interact with them. Plus, we get an opportunity to talk with other types of companies. For example, a lot of times there will be market analysts there. There'll be equipment suppliers who have latest equipment which is related to our process. So these types of events, like the one starting tomorrow, are very important to us to participate at and interact with various companies, individuals, look for opportunities for obviously technology sales and ways that we could improve our technologies and focus our technologies and where the markets are going from, like the companies that really study the marketplace and identify what products are in specific parts of the world are demanded. So very important for us to be here.
Okay, and talking about not only the end users and customers, are you looking at subcontractors as well within these kind of events?
We don't see the concept of subcontracting like the engineering companies do EPC as much as we do. There's times,
for example, technology producers or equipment manufacturers.
Well, we do have alliances with some companies that have technologies that we don't offer. And so, because some customers want a technology company or group of companies to supply all of the technologies to support their project. And so we have 2 or 3 companies we have alliances with. Sometimes we see them at these events and we talk to them. But certainly a process like we have, equipment is a very important part. And we don't typically develop equipment, even things like valves or pumps. In these processes, they're very high technology. They're high technology in themselves. So the more we can meet those people and we get a chance to talk with them at length at these events, helps a lot in understanding what's the right products to include in our technology offering or to recommend to a customer so that their project is successful and reliable.
And for example, if I'm the equipment manufacturer and I want to start working with your company, do you have any chance or for you to say like, okay, let's continue negotiations after the Congress?
Of course, certainly. We always, if you meet someone who has a unique piece of equipment that you're not aware of at an event like this, there will be follow-up meetings, and there will be a lot of discussions, especially if we're interested. If we're not interested, there won't be very much discussions. But assuming they have something unique and beneficial, we'll have a lot of discussions with them. And we'll probably, when we treat them, actually, we treat them like customers treat us. We put them through a rigorous examination of why this product would, or piece of equipment, for example, would be beneficial for the process and the customer. And once we've verified and are comfortable that it is, we can support that piece of equipment or recommend it as an option for the customer for this process.
So I should be very well prepared before coming to you at the Congress with all the documentation, or how should I be prepared?
Well, it's usually we're aware of equipment, but sometimes they'll bring it, and then this is an opportunity to have a discussion on this specific item in more detail, or they may be doing things you weren't aware of, and that's quite common. This is related to one of our other technologies, coking, and we're along with our coking expert talking with this company. We knew they had something related to the decoking process, but we weren't aware of their commercial experience. And they were telling us, yeah, we've applied it here at this refinery, and so now we're much more comfortable.
If, for example, I created a new technology and I do not have experience yet, so there is a kind of chicken and egg problem, because I do not have experience yet, but I can't get it because nobody wants to talk to me when I do not have a portfolio. So what should I do in this case? How do you think?
We started this conversation. I've been around a long time, and I've seen a lot of processes come, and people think they've got the greatest solution. It's revolutionary, it's going to change the way processing is. Rarely does that occur. I wish it could, because that'd be great for our customers, but it doesn't.
So how could we know?
Well, but there are some processes that do look promising, and they can be tested. What they have to do is get their technology into a commercial or semi-commercial environment, so they can really see if it does work. If they have that, sometimes there's processes that are joined to our main technology that are a little bit different than the ones we're using, and they look very promising. So we're looking at ways to work with some of these types of organizations, and a company like us will listen to them, because we're very interested in increasing the performance of our offerings, our technology offerings, and many times someone working on something that's could be a small part but an important part of what we're doing can really make the difference in our technology being selected.
Talking about low carbon future, which is a key trend on the market nowadays, and I know that CLG also states themselves as one of the most environmentally friendly companies in the world, who offers a lot of technologies for biofuels as well. So how do you think, how difficult in terms of effort and cost it can be for oil and gas companies to switch to biofuels?
The switch to biofuels is ongoing in certain ways. First of all, we have to put it in perspective that biofuels are, first of all, very important for reducing the carbon footprint of transportation fuels supplied to our customers. But we don't expect them to be like a high percentage, over 50, 70%. That's because the ability of biofuels is limited. Take, for example, to produce 1,000 barrels of biofuels, such as from Carinita oil, it may take 5,000 acres of land to do so. Now, there are some biofuels projects that are using algae, but they're going to be limited. Put that in perspective, that a typical refinery these days processes something like 200,000 barrels a day and maybe producing 150,000 plus barrels per day of transportation fuels. But they will be, even though they're going to be a small part, they are important, maybe 5-10% of the total mix of transportation fuels produced. So we're part of that, and we see it as important in reducing the carbon footprint, and we're doing our part with the technologies in biofuels that we think will be attractive to customers.
So am I right that you don't think that full transition to biofuels is possible in the future?
I don't think anyone does or expects that, but they will have a strong contribution to transportation fuels, and even greater than in the past.
Okay, and is there a strong competition between your company and others on this sphere?
In biofuels, certainly there's many approaches to biofuels we're seeing. What we see though is a lot of them use a batch type process which has limitations. There's pluses or minuses with every approach you take, right? Like anything. The approach we have is a continuous process. What we've done is we've partnered with a company called ARA, which has a unique process for converting feedstocks like brown oils or greases and other bioproducts to an intermediate product. Where we come in is with our hydroprocessing expertise, and combined we've offered a technology called isoconversion, and it can produce high quality distillates, jet fuels, in a continuous process that can be scaled up depending on the feedstock availability.
What are your thoughts about the future of oil and gas industry? What can we expect?
If you look at what's happening in the world, there's a continued growth in demand for petrochemicals and to a certain extent transportation fuels. And this is not going to stop. So what we have to do as a processing industry is make these petrochemicals more efficient. And that's what we're working on. For example, the JDA with Saudi Aramco is finding ways to make petrochemicals in a more cost-effective manner that will lower the cost and increase the production of petrochemicals from crude oil as the demand for transportation fuels flattens off or maybe drops off a bit.
Okay, our Blitz part, which is the part with the short questions. So please feel free to tell me whatever you come to your mind first.
Okay.
So where would you like to live at your old age?
I'm pretty happy where I live right now in the country outside a big city, and probably stay there.
Okay, great. So if you did not work in the petrochemical industry, would you enter it today?
Absolutely. I think it's changing just as fast today and as interesting as it's ever been.
Okay.
I wouldn't have changed my career.
Lucky you are.
Yeah.
Name the most pleasant occasion in your life.
I'd say my two children, when they got their advanced degrees from universities. My son is now an astrophysicist working in Scotland and doing advanced research and things I don't quite understand. And my daughter has her advanced degree in behavior analysis dealing with autistic children. Very proud of them.
Name the last book you've read.
Well, it's kind of a funny book. It was written many years ago. It's called 1423. It's this person's perception or history of the Chinese trading fleets, which I think it probably a lot of pseudo history, but they claim they circumvented the globe and came to North America before Columbus and all this stuff. But certainly it's just amazing to read how powerful and large the Chinese naval fleet was at that time, and then it compressed to nothing. It's just a fun, interesting, part true history.
And if you can choose any place to live except Canada, where would you go?
Oh, you took that away. Well, I as you know, I live in the south of the United States. Probably Thailand, because my wife is from there, and we have a house in the middle of Thailand. It's a beautiful location, but a bit hot for all year round. Well, maybe Houston's hot too, but so yeah, it's just a beautiful country.
Okay. Who is your role model?
My first one was a famous hydroprocessing expert from another company who I met as a young engineer. And I always remember what he told me when I came into the licensing businesses. Now, Dan, You're no longer an engineer for this company, you're an engineer for the world. And that's always stuck with me. That's good advice for anybody going to work for somebody. You're there for the world in the type of business we're in.
How to build a business that will live 100 years?
You have to find something that's important to society and find solutions that are better than others have for those needs, and hopefully, I don't know, go 100 years, but it'll go many years if you take that approach.
So do you want to create such company yourself?
No, I'm too old.
Why so?
No, I don't know about that. I'm happy to be part of a company that's doing that.